The movie begins at a construction site in full swing. Suddenly, all the workers halt their operations. The crane operator lifts his machine away from the excavation pit, and everyone stares, absolute shock at what they just unearthed. Shortly after, Police Chief Susanna receives an urgent report about the incident, and Officer Kim is also briefed on the situation. It turns out the construction crew discovered a massive, unexploded bomb buried deep underground. Without hesitation, Kim contacts Major Will, a highly skilled bomb disposal expert. Upon hearing the details, Will hypothesizes that the bomb is a leftover relic from World War II. He immediately orders Kim to establish a perimeter, evacuate civilians from the immediate area, and coordinate with the local police to secure the site. The police force arrives rapidly, initiating a massive evacuation and cordoning off the entire neighborhood. During the evacuation, we see a group of men sitting in complete darkness inside a residential apartment. They intentionally ignore the police knocking on their door. The rapid evacuation continues across the district, and we see a man named Rohan exiting his home alongside his mother and father. Meanwhile, Will arrives at the construction site. He meets with Corporal Martin and the construction foreman, who leads them up to a high vantage point to oversee the area. Will instructs Martin to pump out all the water pooling around the bomb. He then commandeers a foreman's office, turning it into their makeshift operations command center, and orders Martin to construct heavy protective barriers around the entire blast zone. Shortly after, Will meets with Chief Susanna and her team. He warns her that the bomb is exceptionally large and highly volatile. It could detonate at any given second. Right then, an official from the planning department bursts in with more bad news. The bomb is resting directly on top of the city's main electrical grid. To prevent a catastrophic chain reaction, they make the call to cut the power to the entire district. With the plan in motion, everyone scatters to their posts. Will speaks privately with Susanna, asking her to maintain constant radio coordination with his team, emphasizing that their cooperation is crucial for a successful operation. A bit later, Martin secures a massive water pump and lugs it toward the bomb to drain the pit. Simultaneously, Kim updates Susanna that the water pumping has begun but notes it will take a considerable amount of time. While the police and military are occupied, the mysterious men hiding in the apartment are closely monitoring the entire situation. We learn that their apartment is located directly adjacent to the state bank. Waiting for the perfect moment, they slip down into a ground floor storage room. This happens exactly as the police deploy surveillance drones to monitor the evacuated zone from above. Back with the gang, the men begin setting up heavy-duty lighting equipment inside the storage room. One of them, Carlos, steps outside, discreetly places a hidden camera facing the front of the building, and locks the door. He then sneaks to the back of the building, pulls a hidden power cable out from a dumpster, and hands the end to his crew inside. He connects the other end to a concealed generator hidden deep within the trash. Once finished, he plants a second hidden camera near the back gate. Inside the storage room, the crew powers up their equipment and immediately begins smashing through the shared wall connecting to the bank. Meanwhile, a frantic bank employee approaches the police barricade, begging to be let inside because the bank's internal alarms are going off. The police dismiss him, explaining that the alarms were likely triggered by the district-wide power outage. They strictly forbid him from entering the perimeter due to the active bomb threat, forcing the frustrated employee to leave. Back in the storage room, the gang has successfully breached the wall. They bring out massive, heavy-duty drills to break into the bank's main vault. Outside, Carlos spots a police patrol car cruising down the street. He quickly signals his crew to kill the power and stop working. The police car slowly inspects the area, finds nothing suspicious, and drives away. Once the coast is clear, the gang resumes their drilling. At the excavation pit, Will carefully examines the bomb and makes a chilling discovery. It's not just a dud, it's a time bomb hooked up to a mechanical timer. He attaches an amplified microphone to the bomb's casing, and a loud, rhythmic ticking echoes through the speakers. Realizing the danger, Will screams at his men to take cover immediately. He frantically slaps a heavy magnetic clamp onto the bomb's exterior, sprints away, and dives behind a barrier. Everyone braces for the imminent explosion, but miraculously, the timer stops. Will catches his breath and radios Kim, confirming they are safe for now. He announces his intent to manually dismantle and defuse the bomb. Kim immediately relays this to the police command, warning them that the bomb is active, could blow at any moment, and that is going in. She emphasizes that heavy blast barriers must be erected before he begins, estimating the entire defusal operation will take at least 5 hours. While the military buys time, the gang cuts through the final layer of the bank vault. Carlos remains outside, keeping a sharp eye on the perimeter. Back at the pit, as the soldiers build the barriers, they notice Martin inspecting the bomb closely. Will shouts out, asking what he's doing. Martin points out a strange anomaly. The inside of the bomb isn't rusted. In fact, the internal components look brand new. Will dismisses the concern, explaining that underground preservation can sometimes prevent rust, and orders the men back to work. Meanwhile, the gang officially breaches the vault. A member named X radios Carlos, confirming they are inside. The crew frantically breaks into the safety deposit boxes, stuffing their bags with cash and jewelry. They discover stacks of gold bars, but X orders them to ignore the gold, it's too heavy and will slow down their escape. They stick to the cash and jewels. Back at the site, Martin is still obsessing over the bomb, unconvinced by Will's explanation. He is certain the bomb is modern. Suddenly, Kim notices on the monitors that the bomb's timer has restarted. She screams a warning for everyone to take cover. Will makes a split-second decision. He is going to crack open the bomb's casing and manually disable the timer himself. Kim updates the police, stating they are completely out of options. At the command center, Chief Susanna notices a strange anomaly on the thermal imaging cameras, a massive heat signature radiating from a location far away from the bomb site. The thermal bloom is coming from the gang's hidden generator inside the dumpster behind the bank. Susanna immediately radios Kim, ordering her to halt Will's operation so they can investigate. Will is stunned when Kim relays the order. Susanna contacts Will directly, explaining the thermal anomaly and stating they must verify it. Will tries to argue, saying he has already opened the casing and it's highly volatile, but Susanna insists the delay will be brief. Inside the vault, Carlos leaves his post, enters the bank, and specifically targets a hidden safe. He pulls out a very specific, small lockbox and adds it to their loot. Meanwhile, at the bomb site, Will notices Martin messing with the magnetic clamp. He rushes out, demanding to know what he's doing. Martin explains he is trying to protect the expensive military equipment since it's under his custody. Will scolds him, dragging him away and stating that human lives are worth more than gear. Back at the bank, Carlos sneaks out to shut off the generator. As a police car approaches, he ducks out of sight, radioing his team to maintain absolute silence. He manages to cut the power to the generator right before the cops spot it. The police approach the building, find it locked, and move on. Because the generator is off, the heat signature vanishes from Susanna's thermal screens. She orders her officers to sweep the area manually just to be sure. Carlos quickly closes the dumpster and tries to walk away casually, but a police officer spots him and orders him to stop. Carlos ignores the command and takes off sprinting. The radio crackles as the officer calls in a foot pursuit of a prime suspect. Realizing time is up, Will makes a shocking call. He decides to intentionally detonate the bomb. He orders his men to brace for impact. Just as the police unlock the back gate to chase Carlos, and just as the gang packs up the last of the loot to flee, Will triggers the explosion. A massive shockwave rips through the district, knocking police officers off their feet. One officer is knocked completely unconscious from the blast, and the police surveillance drone is blown out of the sky. As the dust settles, the soldiers emerge from behind the barriers. Will checks on his team, confirming everyone is alive. The gang also uses the chaos to escape the bank with their bags of loot. Carlos desperately asks to check the small lockbox, but X yells that the police are outside, and they need to move immediately. Ignoring X, Carlos opens the box to verify its contents are safe. X and his partner, Z, flee down the street, while Carlos and his partner, Y, head up the stairs to the building's roof. On the roof, Carlos and Y have to heavily lift drones prepared to transport the stolen goods. However, Y informs Carlos that his drone is malfunctioning. Carlos orders Y to use his drone instead. While Y is distracted piloting the drone, Carlos sneaks away, opens his large loot box, and secretly hides the small lockbox inside it. He then quickly fixes Y's drone, loads his own box into it, and launches it. The drones fly right over the police perimeter, but the cops completely ignore them, assuming they are just police surveillance drones scanning the area. Meanwhile, X and Z run to the construction site, pry open a heavy sewer grate, and climb down into the tunnels. Susanna spots them on the CCTV cameras and instantly dispatches a police unit to the sewer entrance. Elsewhere, a mysterious woman stands on a distant rooftop. The two drones land in front of her. She collects the lockboxes and leaves. Back at the bank, the unconscious police officer finally wakes up. His partner assures him an ambulance is coming, then draws his weapon and enters the building to hunt for Carlos. Downstairs, Y and Carlos exit through the front lobby. Police cars swarm the entrance, forcing the two to run. A police cruiser chases them, but they sprint into an open parking garage and escape out the back. Down in the sewers, X and Z emerge from a different manhole, jumping into a getaway van driven by their accomplice, Kiri. They wait nervously for Y and Carlos to show up. Still on the run, Y and Carlos duck into the sewer system to evade the police manhunt. Luckily, they slip by unnoticed as the cops search the streets above. Meanwhile, the police officer searching the bank finally reaches the basement and is absolutely stunned to find the massive hole drilled through the vault wall. The mysterious woman from the roof meets X at the getaway van, handing over the lockboxes in exchange for a stack of cash before walking away. Kiri tells X they need to leave immediately because the area is too hot. X agrees, deciding they will rendezvous with Y and Carlos at their secondary safe house. At the blast site, the military team begins packing up their gear. Martin pulls Will aside, stating firmly that the bomb was absolutely not from World War II. He insists they must conduct a full forensic investigation on the fragments, implying the situation is now out of their jurisdiction. Will reluctantly agrees. Martin formally notifies Chief Susanna that the military will be launching a forensic inquiry into the explosive device. Simultaneously, the officer in the bank radios headquarters, reporting the massive hole in the vault. Susanna realizes they've been played. She broadcasts a citywide alert that a major bank heist has occurred and orders roadblocks and checkpoints established across the entire district. Down in the sewers, Y and Carlos finally find an exit. They radio X, who drives the van over to pick them up. Once inside, Carlos immediately demands to see the lockboxes to check on his specific item. X hands it over. As they drive, they hit a police checkpoint. X smoothly presents forged documents, claiming they are municipal sewer workers. The officer inspects the paperwork, buys the lie, and waves them through. A bit later, the gang parks under a bridge. They swap the van's license plates and peel off the fake company logos. As they merge onto the highway, the crew celebrates their flawless heist. Chief Susanna and her forensics team arrive at the bank to process the crime scene. She orders her officers to pull the tenant records for the building, specifically targeting apartment 79 directly above the vault. Meanwhile, Rodham approaches the police barricade with his family, pleading to be let back into his apartment to grab their luggage, explaining they have an international flight to catch. When the police hear he lives in apartment 79, they immediately let him through only to detain him for questioning. Back at the crater, a high-ranking army general arrives to confront Will. He demands to know why Will detonated the bomb without consulting command. Will defends his actions, claiming he was focused on defusing it and saving lives. But the general reveals he has reviewed Will's service record. Will has a history of making reckless, unauthorized calls. The general informs him he will be formally investigated for the incident. The gang arrives at their secure safe house. X orders everyone to strip off their clothes so they can burn the evidence along with the van. Elsewhere, Susanna aggressively interrogates Rahan and his family, revealing that their basement storage unit was the staging ground for the heist. Rahim's father states that Rahim holds the only keys to the unit. Panicking, Rahim explains that a few days ago, men showed up at his door presenting official documents from the building's landlord. They claimed the landlord sent them to store equipment and demanded the keys. Rahim pleads that as immigrants, whenever someone shows them official paperwork, they comply without asking questions to avoid trouble. Susanna buys his story, releases the family, and has officers escort them back to their apartment. At the safe house, the gang begins dividing the stolen cash. Carlos opens his small lockbox, revealing it is packed with raw diamonds. The crew is stunned, asking how he knew exactly which safe to target. Carlos brushes it off, claiming it doesn't matter and stating he will handle fencing the diamonds since his family has been in the diamond trade for generations. Suspicious, WWII asks why a guy from a wealthy diamond family would risk his life robbing a bank. Carlos replies that it's a long, complicated story, then excuses himself to make a private phone call. Suddenly, the safe house door is kicked open. Two heavily armed men storm in, screaming at the crew to back up. One of the gunmen tackles Z, beating him to the floor. The other opens fire, shooting while they swarm Kiri, knocking him down. X sprints up the stairs, but a gunman chases him, firing wildly. With nowhere to go, X dives out a second-story window, crashing onto the ground outside. As he groans in pain, a man named Ludo steps out of the shadows and aims a gun right at his head. Ludo's men quickly round up Carlos's crew and lock them inside a garage. Inside the house, Carlos and Ludo sit down at a table to divide the loot. Ludo inspects a diamond, asking its street value. Carlos claims it could fetch up to $4 million. Ludo scoffs, demanding to know how Carlos knew the diamonds were in the bank. Carlos reveals the diamonds actually belonged to his former boss. He explains that he and his boss had a deal, but the boss double-crossed him and tried to have him killed. This heist was Carlos's elaborate revenge plot. Ludo smirks and decides he wants the diamond on the table. Carlos objects, reminding Ludo of their arrangement. Ludo funded the operation, and in return, he gets all the cash and gold from the bank. But the diamonds belong to Carlos. Ludo loses his temper. To prove a point, he picks up a heavy tool and smashes the diamond on the table. It shatters into pieces. Carlos freezes in shock. He frantically inspects the rest of the stash and realizes every single diamond in the box is a cheap fake. Carlos stammers, suggesting someone hacked the vault's security system, or perhaps his old boss knew he was coming and swapped the real stones. Ludo doesn't believe a word of it. He orders his men to grab Carlos and brutally tortures him, demanding the location of the real diamonds. Despite the severe beatings, Carlos insists he has no idea. Fed up, Ludo orders his men to take Carlos to the workshop. They pack all the stolen cash into duffel bags, throw a bloody Carlos into the trunk of their car, and drive off. At the police precinct, Susanna receives an urgent call. The military forensics report is in. Meanwhile, Will arrives at his empty home. His phone rings. It's his commanding officer, who drops a bombshell. The forensics prove the bomb wasn't from World War II. It was stolen directly from a modern military armory. The commander orders Will to report to a disciplinary hearing the next morning. Simultaneously, Rahim sneaks up to the roof of his apartment building, the exact spot where Carlos was working on the drones. Rahim reaches into a hidden crevice, pulls out a bag filled with the real diamonds, pockets it, and walks away. Back at the garage, X manages to pry open the back door of the van and frees himself. He unties his crew and checks on WWII, realizing WWII's gunshot wound is fatal. X orders Kiri to get in the driver's seat and smash the van through the garage door. As they break out, Z realizes WWII has died. Heartbroken but desperate, Z leaves the body and joins X, who pulls out a GPS tracker app on his phone, revealing he planted a bug on Carlos. The three survivors jump into a car and speed off to hunt him down. At his apartment, Rahim carefully packs the real diamonds into a hidden compartment in his luggage. At the precinct, Susanna reviews the background files of the tenants in apartment 79. She discovers that Rahim previously worked as a military translator in Afghanistan before immigrating to the UK. Digging deeper, she finds a massive connection. Carlos was previously arrested for smuggling diamonds from Afghanistan to Belgium. Shortly after, we see Rahim and his family at the airport, successfully passing through security and preparing to board their flight. Out on a deserted road, X and his crew intercept Ludo's car. A brutal shootout erupts. X, Z, and Kiri manage to wipe out Ludo and his men. X pops the trunk and drags a battered Carlos out. Furious about the betrayal, X pulls a plastic bag over Carlos's head to suffocate him. Suddenly, a sniper bullet rips through X, dropping him to the ground. Seconds later, Kiri and Z are also shot. The shooter steps out of the shadows. It's Will. Taking advantage of the chaos, Carlos jumps into Ludo's car and speeds away. Will calmly gets into his own vehicle and leaves the scene. Kiri and Z, though wounded, find the duffel bags full of the bank's cash in the back of Ludo's car and smile, realizing they are rich. Some time later, Carlos arrives at an airport holding a forged passport. He books a one-way ticket to Turkey, checks in, and flees the country. Back in the UK, Martin meets with Chief Susanna and reveals the shocking truth: Will was the one who stole the bomb from the military armory. Both are baffled as to why a decorated officer would do such a thing. Susanna pulls out a photo of Carlos and asks if Martin recognizes him. Martin says no, but he does recognize the man who lives above the bank, Rahim. He explains that Rahim was Will's personal translator during his tour in Afghanistan, and Will personally pulled strings to help Rahim's family immigrate to the UK. Realizing the pieces fit together, Susanna leads a heavily armed strike team to Will's house, but they find it completely emptied out. On his kitchen counter, she notices a newspaper clipping detailing the tragic death of Will's military squad, who were killed while clearing a minefield years ago. We cut to Will, who is boarding a private jet and leaving the country. Some time later, he lands in Turkey and meets up with Carlos. Carlos asks Will why he detonated the bomb earlier than planned. Will explains that the police were closing in on the bank, and he needed to trigger a massive distraction so Carlos and the crew could escape. Just then, Rahim walks up, smiling, confirming everything went off without a hitch. The three men head to a secure location to meet the diamond buyers. They successfully fence the real diamonds for an astronomical sum, splitting the money evenly, each walking away with $30 million. They say their goodbyes, parting ways as wealthy men. The film then flashes back 10 years to Afghanistan. We see Carlos being kidnapped by a ruthless gang from a local diamond mine. They throw him in a truck and drive off. Elsewhere in the mountains, Will and his translator, Rahim, are on patrol. They spot a large squad of armed insurgents heading their way. Will orders Rahim to take cover. As Will steps back, he hears a loud click. He has stepped on a landmine. He freezes, warning Rahim not to move because they've wandered into an active minefield. At that exact moment, the gang's truck carrying the kidnapped Carlos speeds through the area. The truck hits a landmine and violently flips over. A massive firefight erupts between the local insurgents and the diamond gang. In the chaos, Carlos crawls out of the wreckage and runs for his life. Will spots him and asks what is happening. Carlos explains that his boss set him up and is trying to kill him. Will makes a deal. He promises to help Carlos survive and get his revenge. But first, Carlos has to help him defuse the mine he's standing on. Will talks Carlos through the process, explaining exactly which wires to cut in the detonator box. While Carlos nervously works on the explosive, Will and Rahim provide covering fire, shooting back at the insurgents and the gang. Working together, they manage to wipe out the enemies. Carlos successfully snips the correct wire, saving Will's life. The three men look at each other, realizing they survived against impossible odds. From that day on, the three became inseparable friends, spending years planning the ultimate heist to steal the diamonds and get their revenge. Returning to the present day, the narrator reveals the fates of the trio. Carlos used his millions to purchase a massive nature reserve in Africa, though rumors suggest he is secretly mining for diamonds there while remaining on the Interpol most wanted list. Rahim used his cut to establish a massive, legitimate corporation and bought a luxury mansion for his family to live in peace. As for Will, he anonymously donated a massive portion of his fortune to an international charity dedicated to clearing landmines around the world, honoring his fallen squadmates. The film ends. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. If you love Asian movies and dramas,